If the name Tolkien doesn't ring of writing royalty, you probably didn't attend grade school or high school. The grandson of J.R.R. Tolkien, Simon Tolkien, is presenting his third suspense novel, The King of Diamonds. Simon, in a former life, or still existing, was a barrister, which we locally call lawyers, and called on his experience as a barrister to draw some of the inspiration for his writing. Though he was born in England, he's now a Santa Barbara taxpayer. So please welcome Simon Tolkien and Debbie Davison.
What made you pull up stakes from England and come here to Santa Barbara?
Well, it was kind of a bargain. I'm married to an American, and we had a deal that we would spend 10 years in England, and then we'd come over to America, and then it turned into 25. We just celebrated our silver wedding up at the San Isidro Ranch. So 25 years, it was about time that we tried out America. And we kind of put a pin in the map and got really lucky and moved to this wonderful, wonderful town where we are just so happy.
Well, you came to Santa Barbara when you were a boy, and you stayed at the Miramar Hotel with your granddad. Did you remember any of that?
Well, Debbie, I actually didn't come to Santa Barbara when I was a boy. I first came to Santa Barbara 3 years ago.
Oh.
But I did, don't worry, Debbie, I'm
Okay.
not catching you out deliberately.
Because we talked about this
Messing
last
with you.
night, Simon.
No, I know. Actually, I'm so cruel. Yeah. Now, when I was a kid, I went to stay with my grandfather, and he didn't come anywhere as glamorous as Santa Barbara. He went to this little seaside town in England called Bournemouth, which is down on the English Channel where it rains a lot, not like here. And we would go and spend time together. And it's a very, very tiny little hotel, but in my recollection, it's an enormous place because when I was there, I was like 10 years old. So when I went back recently with my aunt, it was so bizarre to see it as an adult and see it really small. So I think we all see things differently depending on how big we are, I guess.
Andrew mentioned that you were a barrister in England, and you say that your writing career is a result of a midlife crisis. What happened?
Well, I didn't have a car crash or anything, but, wake up as a different person. But I think I got to 40, which is a significant age, and that kind of coincided with the millennium, which is a pretty decent time to have a New Year's resolution, I guess. And it also coincided with the making of the Peter Jackson movies of The Lord of the Rings, and I've always had a somewhat ambiguous attitude to being the grandson, and suddenly it was like a huge wave coming at me, and I was just going to be the grandson of The Lord of the Rings, and I kind of wanted to have something of my own. And so I started to write in order to have something of my own, and I'm kind of unusual because I never wrote any fiction at all. Before I was 40, no short stories, no nothing at all. And I think looking back, I kind of felt inhibited by my grandfather. Not his fault, but mine. So I'm trying to make up for it now.
And make up for it, you've done very well. Are there any aspects to your writing that you feel are the same as your grandfather's?
Well, I try and write a page turner. I try and get people to turn the pages, and I think he wanted that. And I think this latest book has some similarities with The Lord of the Rings, because The Lord of the Rings is obviously Sauron, and it's about people being enslaved by jewels. And the inspiration in the beginning of The King of Diamonds is diamonds, and about people being corrupted by diamonds. They did a lot of research on diamonds, and it's where it all started. I suppose the idea that part of my book is set in the Second World War, and the idea that something so small could buy people's freedom. And some of my book is about people trying to escape the Holocaust in Belgium. And then the strange history of diamonds. Years and years ago, people thought that diamonds could heal you. And there was a pope called Clement VI who actually killed himself, apparently, by swallowing 40,000 ducats worth of diamonds, which is a kind of weird thing. And then all the individual diamonds, the curses on the diamonds, whether they were taken out of the eyes of Hindu deities and stolen. And I have an actual real diamond in The King of Diamonds, the Regency diamond, which some people think is cursed because Marie Antoinette, the French queen, wore it as a diadem, and then she got guillotined, as we all know, and then the Empress Josephine 70 years later, escaped an assassination attempt when she was wearing it. And so diamonds were very much an inspiration to this book.
As you can tell, Simon has a passion for modern history, and history is woven into all of your novels thus far, isn't it,
Yeah.
Simon?
I began as history, and I did history at university. And one of the great pleasures to me is that as I've gone on more writing, I've come back to history. And my these two books that I have here today, The Inheritance and The King of Diamonds, are set in 1960. And for my new book, which I'm writing at the minute, I've taken the same detective who's like in his 50s, like me, in The Inheritance and The King of Diamonds, and taken him back 20 years into the middle of the London Blitz and a situation where there isn't a plot to assassinate Churchill. So I really like setting my books in the Second World War or with people who have stories going back into the Second World War, as is the case in The King of Diamonds.
And in The King of Diamonds, we start out with a young man convicted of a murder that he may or may not have committed, and your Detective Inspector Trave is on the trail to make sure that this man is treated justly. It's a fascinating story. You've got wonderful characters in your book, Simon. They have traits like jealousy and greed and a lot of evil. Why do you like to develop the darker sides of human nature in your characters?
Well, I guess this is something like with my grandfather again. I'm kind of thinking as I go, because I think one of the things he did best was evil. I don't really kind of want to admit this, but I'm fascinated by evil, and the charisma of evil people coming under the spell of evil, is something which is truly fascinating to me. And in this book, The King of Diamonds, the policeman's wife is come under the spell of the evil diamond dealer. So the policeman's motives are ambiguous. Is he jealous, or is he in a search for justice? So I like exploring situations where people are faced with choices, and again, the policeman's wife, who has to choose between the boring policeman and this magnificent diamond dealer. I like these kind of choice situations. And I suppose with mysteries, one of the difficult things is that you can't reveal too much. And I feel it sometimes as kind of a straitjacket. In The Inheritance, my favorite character is there, who is truly evil and psychotic. But I can actually fully reveal him because he was the second in command to the guy who died, and obviously very loyal to him. So one of the difficulties is not being able to reveal enough, which is a little frustrating.
Well, Simon, one of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed about your books was that there was so many layers to the story that you're telling. How do you keep all of your layers straight when you're preparing a book?
Well, I have to plot it very, very carefully and try and get everything to work. And it goes back to this idea of mystery as well, that you can't let the cat out of the bag. I find this quite difficult with courtroom drama, where I started off with courtroom drama because I was a barrister, and people told me, which was good advice, to write about what you know. And I know how the inside of an English courtroom works. But with courtroom drama, there was a difficulty in the sense that everything had to be in one place all at one time and follow the sequence of a trial. And I've now tried really to move away from that a little and to have things which are more, if you like, police-orientated with the historical flashbacks.
A wonderful mystery thriller. How did you become a writer? Did you have any formal training? Did you attend workshops?
No, as I say, I never wrote a word of fiction, I swear, until I was 40. But what I did do is I wrote a daily diary for 10 years, starting just after my son was born in 1990. And I think you look back on your life and you see what was I actually doing at that time, which you unconsciously don't really understand at the time. And I think what I was doing was finding a voice that I was comfortable with, because the most difficult thing to me with fiction is that if your fiction is self-conscious, then you're not going to be able to make people believe. But in order to write fiction which has any power, you also have to be able to hear your voice as you write. I remember my grandfather saying that he thought The Lord of the Rings was a book that ought to be read aloud. And I think that was quite interesting. And so I was actually preparing a voice that I felt comfortable with. And I think that's very difficult for people to do.
Do you think that your writing has evolved over the last dozen years, and if so, how?
Well, I think the subject matter has moved. As I say, I've moved away from the courtroom and more into the past. I think there is a somewhat dated, old-fashioned feel to my books. I think I was an only child, and I grew up with 3 television channels, all of which ended with God Save the Queen and the test card at 11 o'clock at night. And so what I was left with was books, and particularly 19th century books. And I think books like, for instance, Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, we see these now being made into movies because they're such great stories, had a huge, Rebecca, I think these had a huge effect on me. In The King of Diamonds, there is a poor girl who is being imprisoned at the top of a country house. And that obviously has overtones of the first Mrs. Rochester being kept mysteriously at the top of her country house. And I think all these country houses with creaking stairs, not quite Hammer horror, is a major part. And they're in all 3 of my books that I've written. I have these country houses, which feature.
You started out, the first book you ever wrote was a black comedy, a dark comedy. What went wrong with that one? Because that one wasn't published.
Well, I thought, write a book, and, you're going to get published, and it's all going to be wonderful. And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, because if you've done no writing at all, as I had done of any fiction, your first book is going to be a learning process. But, I wrote it, I loved it, I thought this is wonderful, and then I sent it out, and I sat there waiting for replies, because in those days it wasn't like email. You had to send it out in a big envelope with it all printed out. And then I just got all these rejections, and I felt really miserable. But I was determined, and so I went on from there and, went on to write another one. So I didn't know as I was writing it that I was learning, but that's what I was doing.
Final Witness actually was translated into several languages. What did you feel when you knew that that one was the hit?
I think it helped. I mean, going back to what we were saying earlier, Debbie, that I was writing about what I knew. I think this really helps with people, particularly when you're starting out. If you know something, people like that. People want to find out about a new world. And the world of the criminal law in England with barristers, with wigs, and it's a very exciting world. And I think people like that.
When can we expect your new one?
Well, I'm actually going to try and coincide the release of my new one with the release of the $500 million There and Back Again by Peter Jackson, which is coming out in November, or December. So I'm going to try and publish my next one at the end of the year. And I'm doing something different in it, which I don't know will succeed. I'm a little nervous about it. It's set in 1940, and I'm actually having real historical figures in it. So I have Adolf Hitler, Goering, Winston Churchill. It's actually a plot that Trave, my inspector, stumbles on to assassinate Churchill, Reinhard Heydrich, and all that in the book. And so it's been very interesting to research what these people were really like. Things like YouTube is very, very exciting because, you can actually now see places like Berchtesgaden live and they've managed to, I don't know if people know this, but to lip sync what was actually being said. Yeah. And so this has all been really interesting to me from a historical point of view. Have to see how it works. You'll be the judge of that, not me, come November.
Simon, you've been quoted as saying, "I am committed to writing books that which make my readers want to turn the page without feeling at the end that they have gorged on junk food." I've read 2 of your books, and they were both excellent, and I guarantee that if you add Simon Tolkien to your reading list, you will have a feast indeed. Thank you very much, Simon, for being with us.
Thank you all. Thank you.